Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Wednesday, December 17th, 2025. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. The beautiful dome of Dave Biddle is, I think, Monaco. I've been trying to find him. I can't really share. He's on vacation. Not really sure. I think Monaco, perhaps Dubai, but Dave loves to get out there. He chose a good week to take off. It's not game week. So that means you get a lot of me and you get a lot of backs today. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to briefly discuss current events, and then we're going to live pick the college football bracket. I think we are legally obligated as a college football podcast to dedicate one show to live bracket picking. If you have a search function on your YouTube, you'll see plenty of them. Backs, how goes it?
You know, Dan, it can't be a bad thing right now with the Buckeyes heading into the playoffs and, the shenanigans that are happening at our rival right now make it a little more stark relief between the two. So that's a good spot to be for a Buckeye guy.
Shenanigans. I have to get a definition on shenanigans. I think that might be a little too positive, but we digress. We're going to talk a little bit today about a very positive recruiting development. We'll talk a little Michigan, and then we'll get to the bracket first. And what will make for a great book, I think it will be written by Mike Roach, the 24/7 Sports boots on the ground guy in Texas. Once again, that's what you get with this subscription. All of our information on Legend-ary from the Texas side came from Texas. Mike Roach has been all over this, been the premier reporter on it, and told you that Legend-ary went through what I can only describe as a familial rift. Wanted to go to Ohio State, had verbally committed to Tennessee originally, flipped to Ohio State. Then on signing day, their legalities was signing. Who knows what an NLI, National Letter of Intent, really is anymore. Long story short, he ended signing day, committed to Tennessee. He turns 18, I believe, on December the 24th. And that means he can take control of his own signing. There was some discussion that Tennessee would not let him out of the signing, etc. Yesterday, it became official. They let him out. Now we expect him to sign on the dotted line, whatever that even means anymore, digitally, either on Christmas Eve or soon thereafter. Your thoughts on the Legend-ary experience? It's a classic, all's well that ends well.
This is one of those recruitments we're going to talk about for a long time. This goes back to I forget who the safety was that ended up signing with Alabama. It was the guy that Cardale Jones ran over in the Alabama game, and Landon something, and he signed with Alabama, and his mom was sitting there behind him like, LSU #1, no way, I don't agree, I don't like it. This is like the same thing, except Legend-ary wasn't old enough to sign his own LOI, with this being December versus February and their relative ages. And his mom literally wouldn't let him sign. And then there's question of whether Legend-ary actually personally signed with Tennessee or if somebody signed for him with Tennessee. His social media had a post that day that came out, and he was like, I don't agree with this, and my brother's trying to take away my social media. Like, they were talking about at the high school that they had to like keep the family separate. That's how heated this got. I can't wait to get the whole story. There's talk of like of some player ID money going to the family instead of the player. Like, it seems like the world's biggest shenanigans, this gigantic family rift, and this kid who just very clearly does not want to be at Tennessee, and very clearly has family members that want him at Tennessee for whatever reason. And with the transfer portal today, with the way that, like you said, there's not really a national letter of intent anymore. Like before, once you got that signature, they were locked. And at this point, it means nothing. I mean, we've seen this with Michigan letting kids out of letters of intent. And Legend-ary, it looks like, is going to get what he ultimately wants, which is to be a Buckeye. And this is of all the different recruitments we've ever seen, Dan, I don't think we've ever seen one, certainly not one that ended up in Ohio State's favor, that looked like this before.
So one of the good things about my job is I'm privy to what our reporters are hearing that can't yet be published. And so among the cognoscenti, Mike Roach and then Garrick Hodge, they've been dealing with this story for quite some time. So we kind of knew it was happening. It's pretty rare I get a call out of the blue being like, you got to hear this one. And this was a Legend-ary one. First couple things. One, Landon Collins was the name.
Landon Collins, yeah.
Yep. And that was more public. At least they did that out in front of everybody and displayed their rift rather than getting behind closed doors. And what was not funny about this one, I'm glad it ended up the way it did. You remember in the horror movies, they'd be like, the call is coming from inside the house.
Yeah.
He got hacked on Twitter. It's like the hacking is coming from inside the house. You know what I mean? So all's well that ends well. If you want to watch some good stuff, go watch Legend-ary play. He is the classic elite athlete, quarterback, because he was the best athlete on the field. You want to get him the ball as much as possible. In Texas, high level of competition. The idea of it ultimately in a few years choosing between Jameer Brown or Legend-ary to return kicks is going to be a fun decision to make. Who knows? Let them both do it. Flip it, either or, whoever wants to do it. All right. Now, we kind of grease the skids here. Bax has not been on the air, at least not that I know of, I don't think, since what can only be described as one of the wilder, I don't even know if it's over, just the wild occurrences that has ever taken place in the public eye in sports. Look, we've known Michigan has been running a questionable program. I think, I don't know if Sharon Moore was the 6th or the 7th coach arrested since old Jimmy took over for varying degrees of malfeasance. This one, though, got really spooky, and a lot of lives were impacted. So we're not going to sit here and, detail the mental health side of it, because there's clearly some issues there. But just your general vibe on what has gone on. And I'll say this, if you walked, let's pick a non-college football town where people are still sports fans, and there are a few of them, and you walked up to the average person and said, what is the dirtiest program in college football? I think for a while you're going to get Michigan, which is certainly not what they want, considering they have long held themselves up as a higher level of evolution. Bax, the floor is yours. You get a few minutes here before we pick the CFP.
Yeah, Michigan's the dirtiest program in college football, and there's really no question about it. I think this is their 6th interim head coach or full-time head coach in the last 2.5 years, with Biff Pogai back in charge. If you look at their fake national championship year, both their co-coordinators on offense have now been arrested for various reasons. This isn't just cheating to get recruits in. This was obviously the industrial level cheating scandal. That's the biggest scandal in North American sports since the Black Sox. But now you're talking about probably the most public all-time crash out we've ever seen by somebody losing his job. And like, this is a program that you said, the Michigan man, they always hold themselves all the way up as the special leaders and, next level of super duper special human beings. And the reality is the Michigan man concept isn't just dead. It's been murdered in the streets, hung in an effigy, drawn and quartered. They're the dirtiest program in the sport. Make no bones about it. They like to talk. Remember, all these people have talked about how they have like the best people and the cleanest this and that. It's gone, and it's gone forever. Michigan will be forever synonymous with dirty, rotten, cheating, misbehaving, frankly, bad humaning. That's what Michigan football has been the last 3 years. So at the end of the day, it's going to be I don't know if it's going to be an easy recovery for them either, because if I'm them, I'm to any attempt to sort of regather what's going on in that football program, you have to tear it down to the studs. You have to get away from anybody who's associated with the tarnished Harbaugh era. And to them, they're going to sit and claim this national championship forever that we all know was BS. And everyone in the rest of the world is going to go, that's nice. Good job. We all know it was fake. We all know it was the scummiest, dirtiest program that we've ever seen. And guys, I lived in the South. I remember the SEC before the national letter, or before the player ID money and all this paying players crap. Ed Ogeron came out flat out and said, "Oh no, the only difference now is we take money in the front door instead of in the back door." Right? I was telling y'all for years about that. Right? I got in trouble with certain SEC programs, coverage people, because I was calling out what was happening, and we all know it was. Michigan right now is dirtier than any of them, because the stuff that these coaches have. I mean, when you have a head coach who is messaging OnlyFans models at half times of football games, you have a problem with picking good people to raise these young men. That's what you're looking at here. So this is an absolute moral failing. It's not one guy. You can always look at Bobby Petrino when he had the infamous motorcycle crash, right? This is not the first powerful man to cheat on his wife with an underling in sports or life or whatever. But when you have this happening, and then you have the cheating scandal, and then you have multiple guys that have been arrested associated with the program, and when you have an FBI investigation into the co-offensive coordinator, Sharon Moore, hacking into people's private images from Michigan computers, you've got a bunch of scumbags. And I think that's how we're all going to remember this era of Michigan football, is that it was ran by bad people. And the only thing Michigan can do, if they really want to try to get away from this, is to have a complete clean break with everybody associated with the Harbaugh era. Not just the cheating, but all the bad humaning that's been going on around it. And it's going to probably be a teardown for them. I don't think this is going to be a quick fix, like I think Penn State was a quick fix. And Penn State hiring Matt Campbell is going to have them immediately competitive again. I think Michigan's in for what looks like a downswing to me, no matter who they end up hiring here, because they can't. A lot of these kids aren't going to stick around either. It's a mess in Ann Arbor, and I can't say I'm unhappy about it, because it's just desserts for the way they've acted the last 5 years.
Yeah, there's really just a level of apparently deviant behavior.
Yeah,
I mean, these aren't it's one thing to cheat. Who's going to love is a bad choice of word, but the person that's going to look best after all this is Connor Stallions, because what he did was just cheating for football.
Yeah.
Good Lord. These other people are deviants, have issues. I don't want to, you wouldn't want your daughter to be alone in the same room as these people. Seriously.
Yeah. Connor Stallions is going to come out of this as being the madman that came up with a somewhat creative solution and implemented it. Even if it was cheating, as the South used to say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right?
Right.
Connor Stallions looks the best of all of these guys. All of them. Because they're all otherwise tarred and feathered by just bad human stuff, where Connor Stallions was an overzealous younger person who got away with murder and got enabled by people that should have known better but were desperate, like Harbaugh. So, my only request here is that the level of shenanigans that's gone on around Michigan is dealt with the same way that the Tattoo Gate situation was 15 years ago. Jim Tressel got a 4-game NFL suspension. I haven't seen shit about Jim Harbaugh right now. So at the end of the day, I think we can all know that the biggest thing that's going to hurt Michigan is anytime they bring up that Michigan man thing, they're going to get laughed in their faces by the rest of us. That's gone for good. I don't care how super duper special you think you are. A lot of these people aren't employable. Michigan's president was trying to jump off the sinking ship and go take the Florida job, and the Florida Regents voted it down, saying, we don't want that guy. Did you see what he did to Michigan? So at the end of the day, goodbye, good luck, and you're all cheating scumbags.
Yeah, what makes it worse, they've had issues with other sports. And so people ask about Ward Manuel. I think Ward Manuel is not going to enjoy the next few months. Once you have an investigation like this, and like I said, it's you turn something upside down, you're going to see the dark underbelly of whatever they've done, and you're going to have anecdotal. I mean, you're already starting to get it from dude's digital footprint as he tried to spread the love.
Flips on the rest of them, Dan. Here, what's going to end up happening is he just lost $15 million and probably his marriage and his personal status. He's going to be embittered.
Freedom.
He knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows where all the bodies are buried with Michigan football, and it's going to come out. I've been saying for a while that I figured Michigan would have a rich booster pay him off to try to keep him quiet, but I don't know if you can at this point. That Sharon Moore is going to be the one who comes out and dishes on this program eventually. And Ward Manuel, the only reason he still has a job is probably mutual assured destruction with people around him.
Yeah, but that's temporary.
Yeah, I think so too.
Now it's all in the hands of lawyers and all that other good stuff. Yeah, it's going to be something crazy to watch. And we could sit here and talk about it forever because it's a legendary, scandalous time. There's going to be a book written someday about the X number of things that actually benefited from the pandemic. And one of them is going to be Michigan football because they would not have won the title had the pandemic not kicked in. And they allegedly, everyone got sick at the right time.
Just like their hockey team. They have that documented. Their hockey team claimed COVID, and Harbaugh got the idea from them.
So there you have it. So look, in a strange turn of events, I actually think Michigan's going to benefit from this in some level because I think they were very poorly coached by Sharon Moore, and now they'll probably end up getting a better coach in a few years from now. Not hopefully, but they'll be back to competitive because it's a big operation. All right, now let's talk about teams that are actually going to play football still. Other teams, but without the cloud of suspicion, or what's the cloud of knowing? I don't know what that's called. Not really suspecting anymore. The cloud of just ignominy, if that's even pronounced correctly. We're going to pick the games. We're going to let Bax make the pick. I may throw in a little yay or nay for this, but we're going to pick every game, starting with Bax. Number 12, James. Actually, let's go in chronological order. I'm sorry. Number 9, Alabama versus number 8, Oklahoma. Again, first round games at the home of the higher seed. December 9th, 8 p.m., Alabama at Oklahoma. Alabama is a 1.5-point favorite on the road.
I'm taking Bama in this one too. Oklahoma won at Alabama earlier this year. Alabama's coming off of an embarrassing game against Georgia. They're going to want to validate themselves as a legit playoff team. And I wrote a whole big article last year about rematches in the regular season to bowl games or big games at the end of the year. And the team that loses the first game usually wins the second one. So I am going to be taking the Alabama Crimson Tide in that game.
Okay, so we have Alabama advancing to face Indiana. We'll get to that one. On the top side there, the later game, December 20th, the next day, 7:30 p.m. at Oregon, 21-point favorite over James Madison.
Yeah, and this is going to be Oregon. I think we all know what's going to happen there. Great story for JMU. The ACC could do a lot worse than to snap up that program to get to an even number. But at the end of the day, Oregon's going to win that football game. And if you remember, too, last year, the first 4 games, none of them are close. This is going to look a lot like that.
The other first-round games, let's go with chronological here, December 20th, noon, kickoff. This is one everyone's going to be watching. Miami at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 3-point favorite at home, which usually means they believe the teams are even. This is a very interesting game. I'll let you to the details, but both of these teams at some point in time this year have looked like a world beater and then have had maybe an experience where you didn't have a lot of faith in them. Your thoughts on who Ohio State will face?
Yeah, this is the two teams that can't finish, right? Miami under Mario Cristobal always falls apart down the stretch, and Texas A&M is the king of choking. We even saw it with them against Texas this year, the chance that they'd make the SEC championship game. The only reason Texas A&M's in the playoff is because they came back from down 30-3 at halftime to South Carolina, or they'd have 2 losses and probably got left out. The reality is I don't have any belief in Texas A&M at all. They played literally the bottom half of the SEC plus Texas, and they beat the bottom half of the SEC and lost to Texas. They have a nice early win over Notre Dame, but it's tough to take much away from early September games or August games. If you're asking me, I like Miami's defensive line. I think they're going to cause a real problem for them. And I know it's a road game for the Hurricanes, but let's face it, they don't exactly have home games anyways or fans. So I think Miami's going to go down to College Station and continue Texas A&M's persistent curse in big games, and I think that the Hurricanes are going to win this one.
It's interesting, and I'll say just in general, I think these games, the first game you get from these teams, is really the truest sense you're going to see of this team all year. That's the healthiest they'll have been, kind of the most prepared they'll have been going into a game. So your truest sense of what these teams are is this first game. Who did you pick? I'm sorry.
Miami.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, to me, that's a true pick 'em.
Yeah, I think it'll
be
a little.
I have to admit, I don't, and this is just not. I just don't buy into Carson Beck. There's just something about him that makes me uncomfortable. I apologize to the Beck family, but it just makes me oogie. I think Texas A&M will win that, but we'll get to that. All right, round 2.
You forgot one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tulane, Ole Miss.
Did I forget it?
Tulane, Ole Miss.
Tulane, Ole Miss.
Dan, I'm just going to say this. This is, if I had to rank these confidence 1 through 4, this is my least confident because both teams have had coaches leaving. Tulane has already lost once to Ole Miss early in the year. Then they went on a nice run with the shenanigans going on, with the coaches leaving, all this stuff. I'm going to pick Ole Miss because it's probably the right pick. But if there's any game where I think something goofy happens, it's that game.
I believe they've played already once this year. Is that correct?
Ole Miss won by 17.
I'll tell you what. The head coach of Tulane is going to Florida, John Summerall. You want to talk about exit strategy dichotomy here in these two games. He's still, I think, loved by the Tulane people. He's going to coach, and he's already made a huge donation to Tulane's NIL.
$1 million. Yeah.
That's a smart fella. And by the way, intense dude. I think just for my money, Florida and Penn State did the best in the coaching searches, but I digress. All right. We're going to go in chronological order here. So December 1st. So December 31st, New Year's Eve, Cotton Bowl. Some real football will be played there for the first time all year at Jerry World. Yes, that's a joke at my own personal expense. The U takes on Ohio State. Apparently, they've met in a playoff game before that had some relative intrigue. There's Zapruder films that the original football Zapruder film in the end zone. Backs. The new year will be rung out in what fashion as Miami goes to the Cotton Bowl, face Ohio State. I'm going to predict the spread is if they beat, let's say they beat Texas A&M, Miami at Ohio versus Ohio State neutral field. I will say the spread is 8.
That was where I figured would be more than a touchdown, less than 10 points. So, and we're going to, if this happens, so there's 2 things that happen. If Aggie wins, then it's a home game for Texas A&M. But if the Miami team wins, we'll just see replays of the 2002 national title game on loop. And the reality is Miami fans still act like we murdered their family because of that game, even though it should have never gone to overtime. And Chris Gamble had a 3rd down conversion that with instant replay today would have actually ended the game in regulation with about 3 minutes left. They love to forget that part. I think Ohio State's a better team than Miami. I can put it plain and simple. I don't really trust Carson Beck either. I just trust Aggie less. I think Ohio State takes advantage of his mistakes. I think the Buckeyes come out pretty much fixed from the Indiana game, and I think it's a big Ohio State win. I think it's going to look a lot like last year's playoff game in this one.
I'll tell you what, I remember Will Smith in that game years ago being just unblockable, and the fact that his son would take the field and that would be spiritual in and of itself. So, yeah, I don't see keep in mind, we talked about getting your best punch. Ohio State, for once, is going to be able to give someone else their best punch. They're going to be the more rested team. They get to watch you play. Do not tell me having the week off and getting to watch someone play in a playoff game does not make it easier for you to play them the next week, just physically. That's just, there's no question about that, especially with guys, your rolled ankles and such. Okay. Let's go chronologically here. You got 3 games on January 1st. That's not a fun way to ring in the new year, is it? Good Lord, especially after a win. you will have the Oregon Ducks facing Texas Tech in the Capital One Orange Bowl. Actually, a neutral site. That's a real neutral site field.
Yeah, that one's a
right
legit
there.
neutral site.
Your thoughts?
I like Oregon. Texas Tech's got a nice defense. They've had a nice year in the Big 12. Personally, I've been really high on Oregon all year. If you look at them this season, I mean, they lost to Indiana at home, and that loss looks really good right now. As good as Indiana looks. I'm going to take the Ducks in this one. I think that's your classic offense versus defense game, though. That'll be a really fun game. But I would take Oregon in that matchup.
I think if you're picking, and you had to be right, this would probably be arguably the hardest game to pick.
Oh, yeah.
I think Texas Tech has a real good chance, given the fact that Oregon will have played. I'll say this. Tell me how healthy Oregon's skill players are. They have some real skill talent, but they've been limited. I don't think you're going to beat Texas Tech on a neutral field where they have this much time to get ready for you if you're not close to full strength. But we shall see. All right. Now this, okay, chronologically. Alabama versus Indiana in the Rose Bowl. I'll say this. This, to me, is going to be the most fascinating non-Ohio State game that you will see for this reason. I believe this is the first time in the history of Indiana football where they're really going to take another team's absolute best punch. They're the team that's being hunted. They're the team that is number one. The idea of Indiana football being an also-ran is gone. So Indiana gets to experience in this game what Ohio State experiences every single time they play. Okay. If you play and every time you lose, the field gets rushed, you're something special.
Yep.
I'm not sure anyone's ever rushed the field after Indiana. Maybe they did later in the year. No, of course they didn't. They didn't lose.
Indiana hasn't lost since they got
Yeah, so that didn't happen. So think about that. It's like Duke basketball. How do you know they lost? Because the crowd's rushing the field or court or storming it, whatever you want to call it. So, backs. Alabama, Indiana, January 1st in the Rose Bowl.
I got to tell you right now, I think Indiana's legit. We saw that in the last game against Ohio State, even with the mistakes OSU made. And this isn't your Nick Saban's Alabama team anymore. Bama's going to come out and try to give them their best shot. There's no question about that. I think Indiana's got too much on offense for Alabama to be able to hold them back. I think Bama has defended their honor with a win over Oklahoma. And I think the Hoosiers are just a better football team. And remember, this is the biggest game in the history of their football program. The Rose Bowl, after winning the Big Ten, number one in the country for the first time ever. So, the reality is, I think, weirdly as this sounds, I don't think Alabama's as good in the trenches as Indiana, which is something I never thought I would say. But here we are. And so with that in mind, I'm taking Indiana. Like, you're right. It's going to be the most fascinating game of the day for sure, though. Because if Indiana had a different logo on their helmet, then people wouldn't be having this conversation. But because it's the best season in the history of their football team, it makes it for a fascinating dichotomy. So I'm taking Indiana, though. I just think the Hoosiers are going to beat Alabama. I think they're better. And I don't think Alabama has the explosion in them like we saw from Ohio State last year to go in and knock off the number one seed in the first game. Everybody's looking at last year where teams 5-8 won the 4 games and acting like that was, like a given. And that, look at them, they're fresher, or they're more on their timing's good and they're on. Well, last year the seedings were screwed up anyways because 3 and 4 from last year wouldn't have been 3 and 4 under this year's system anyways. So I think it's going to be Indiana in the Rose Bowl. I do think that'll be a fun game to watch, though.
I'll say this. Indiana should should hope for Alabama to beat Oklahoma because Oklahoma's defense will lock Indiana up. And then you just got Mateer versus Mendoza for one game. And Mateer is the guy who, to me, for one game, I don't think he consistently can do it. But if he catches lightning in a bottle, is feeling good that day, he can beat you. And Oregon's defense is legit. Also, keep in mind, Indiana, their offense was fine. They scored 13 points.
Yeah.
Against Ohio State's defense. There's some of it's turnover related. And here's another thing. They celebrated, and one of their players got hurt. Stephen Daly, a defensive lineman, who's a good player, and apparently is out. So
yes,
that's ironic that their enjoyment of the win against Ohio State may end up being their Achilles heel. And yes, I know I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. All right, so what do we got here? Ole Miss, Georgia.
I'll keep this one brief. It's the most boring of the quarterfinal games, and Georgia's going to win regardless if it's Ole Miss or Tulane.
Okay, I think everyone would agree with you. In fact, I think among the college football coaches, they picked Georgia, which is not surprising. Okay, so you have the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. The Fiesta Bowl comes first. It is, in my opinion, the two best programs, Georgia versus Ohio State.
And I think Ohio State's better this year than Georgia. Georgia's had a nice run. They've certainly come on as the year has gone on. Obviously, Kirby Smart knows what he's doing. These teams met once already, and were it not for a ridiculous overturn of a target to the head of Marvin Harrison, Ohio State would have won the 2022 national title like Georgia did. But I think this is one where Ohio State is the better football team. I don't see Gunnar Stockton putting up a ton of points against the Buckeyes. And the only reason Ohio State lost to Indiana, let's be frank, was our own poor decision-making in the red zone in terms of who we had on the field. And I don't think Ohio State repeats that mistake. So I think the Buckeyes will beat Georgia in the semifinal and go back to the national title game.
So I don't know if everyone's paying attention. I'm sure you are. You got 3 of your 4 finalists coming from the Big Ten.
I do.
That will not make people in the SEC happy long term. Let's talk about the other game. You have a rematch of what was a tremendous game out in Eugene, won by Indiana, and I think probably the most impactful win of the year for any team as I look back on it now in terms of just winning and reputation, et cetera. Everything changed for Indiana in terms of national vibe, at least to me. Once they won that game, I'll speak for myself. I was like, okay. And then they, of course, beat someone else later on in the year. I'm not sure who that was. So January 9th, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. We'll pick that one. Oh, no, excuse me. Yeah, we'll pick that one. Oregon, Indiana.
And I, as I mentioned previously, have done my research on rematches. Oregon lost at home. I think they were surprised at how good Indiana was in the trenches. They had some turnovers. I think Indiana is probably the second best team in the country behind Ohio State, but Chuck doesn't always win out in these things. I am picking Oregon to beat Indiana in that game and set up an Ohio State-Oregon national championship game. I think Indiana is they're going to miss Daly badly against Alabama. I think it's going to be a real challenge for them. I think Oregon is going – if there's any team that's going to go on a, quote, run like Ohio State did last year, it's Oregon. They've got the pieces and parts to do it. I think they avenged their loss to Indiana earlier this season, and I think they make the national title game against Ohio State.
January 19th. 7:30 p.m. Miami Gardens, Florida. Good Lord, that's over a month away. The end of the gauntlet. Ohio State going for back-to-back titles. Ohio State playing the team that beat them. Ohio State fighting to keep Kirk Cignetti from being.
So I picked Oregon.
I'm sorry, you're right. You're right.
I picked Oregon.
I got Cignetti on the brain. That's my fault. To keep Dan Lanning even better.
And Oregon's going to be thinking about the Rose Bowl from last year the whole time.
I'll tell you what, Dan Lanning, he's going to be fired up for that. I mean, good Lord, that guy might explode, spontaneously combust on the sideline during that game. Oregon, Ohio State, it would be there would be some really interesting chatter leading up to this game about Nike, etc. Make your pick and we'll get out of here.
I'm picking the Buckeyes. This defense, I don't think, loses another football game. Even the game we lost was 13 points against. They still haven't given up 16. And that's my biggest prediction is that Ohio State doesn't give up 17 or more points this whole playoff run and wins a national title. They're the best team. They only beat themselves against Indiana. When you get twice inside the 10-yard line and get no points after 60-plus yard drives in the second half of that game, that's your own fault. And I think that they're going to look in the mirror and go, oops, can't do that again. And I think they go back-to-back for the first time in the history of Ohio State's program.
I'll agree, and I'll leave you with this. 2 hyperbolic predictions. 1, MVP of the playoff run, Bo Jackson. Heisman Trophy winner next season, Bo Jackson. Have a good one, Nutters of Buck.